welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today I kind of wanted to just go on a little bit of a rant about a new conversation. Not a new one, but something that's kind of gotten a recent uptick because The Mandalorian Season 3 is coming out soon, and that's really the whole discussion around the Book of Boba Fett and whether or not the whole Grogu with Luke Skywalker situation should have been wrapped up so quickly in those last 2 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, or, you know, in those last 3 episodes? I don't know. And a lot of people online are bothered by this. You know, they've been bothered by it for a long time, but with Season 3 coming out, it's kind of gotten a new spark in the conversation because, you know, some people are talking about how, like, oh, my wife was watching a trailer for Mando 3 and she's really confused because she didn't watch the Book of Boba Fett, and this is really, really stupid, and it's dumb that they did this, and it's like, you know, and my whole argument is simply that, if you want to know all of the information that's happening in Star Wars, even important plot points, especially when it's another live action show on Disney Plus, it's being written, produced by the exact same people who made The Mandalorian, that should be an obvious indicator that, like, hey, information's gonna be in this show that you're probably gonna want to know for the future, okay? And, you know, it's like, if you decided not to watch that show, which obviously it's your choice, that's perfectly fine, but what you're, you know, the decision you're really making is that I am willing to give up whatever information they are going to reveal in this show, and I'll have to Google it later or ask a friend or something like that to figure out what happened. Now, it seems to me that if you're making that choice, then you shouldn't be complaining that you don't have information, right? Like, this is being written and produced, and it's on the same exact platform as the show that you wanted to watch, and you decided not to watch this other show, maybe because you don't care about Boba Fett or something, I don't know, but it's like, then that means that you made that choice. Why are you complaining? You didn't want to watch the show and you didn't, so there you go, that's fine, right? And a lot of people are, maybe they're angry about the structure of the whole thing, and look, that's not really what I'm getting into. I'm not talking about, like, the Book of Boba Fett's structure and how Boba Fett was essentially gone for 2 episodes of his own show, and I agree, that was weird and it was wonky, and it was, you know, that definitely could have been better, right? Like, maybe if they had like piecemealed out the whole Luke and Grogu thing, you know, cut that scene up, sprinkle that throughout the rest of the season, and keep Boba Fett the focus of those episodes or something, you know, kind of like how they were doing with his flashbacks. You know, that probably would have been better, but that's not really the argument I'm trying to make here. That's not really what I'm talking about, how wonky it was done. But the fact that it was done, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. You know, it's, you know, similar with, for example, Solo came out and Darth Maul was at the very end, and I remember several people being really confused with, like, wait, how is that Darth Maul? How is he alive? And I would simply tell them, well, there's a whole show. You know, it came out years ago at this point. There was an entire show where he came back to life, and he did a whole lot of things in that TV show, and you know, it was a cartoon, and a lot of people dismissed the cartoon because it was a cartoon, which again, whole other argument, whole other debate right there, but that's unfair that they dismiss cartoons like that. But my point is, you decide not to watch a show, which is completely your right? Like, you don't have to, you shouldn't be expected to watch everything because not everyone has that time, you know, like, only people who are kind of obsessed with this universe really do that, where they watch every show, every comic, every book, every game, right? Like, yeah, I tried to do that, you know, and that's fair, but again, what you're relinquishing in that act, in that decision, is there might be important information that eventually gets revealed in this show, and you know, because you decided not to watch it, you don't get that information, or at least you have to Google it later. Again, that's fine. I'm not judging anyone for deciding not to watch something. My only point is that it seems very silly to complain about, like, well, they shouldn't have done that. It's like, but why though? But why? Because the Book of Boba Fett takes place after Mando Season 2. You know, Grogu and Mando's life was not put on pause. If anything, you know, we've been 2 years without the show. It makes perfect sense from a producer standpoint to be like, hey, we haven't seen anything from Mando and Grogu in a long time because it's been like over a year since that season ended. Let's put something in this show that kind of gives you a whole update. That way, by the time their show comes back, we can just hit the ground running. And that's exactly what they did. You know, again, I'm not here to, like, debate about the wonkiness and the weirdness of how Boba Fett's show essentially hit pause for them to do that, but the fact that it was done, I think, is perfectly valid and fine, and it seems weird that people are complaining about it. You know, I even had people saying like, well, I shouldn't have to watch some crappy show just to get back to the good show. And I'm like, well, look, the quality of the show, obviously, you know, everyone's opinions are different, but the quality of the show does not negate the fact that it is in the shared universe. And yes, this is the shared universe, and a lot of people don't like me using that term because, oh, that's Marvel, that's a Marvel term, you know, this is Star Wars is not like Marvel. And I hate to break this news to you, you know, get ready. Star Wars has been a shared universe before Marvel. You know, essentially since this stopped just being 6 movies, Star Wars has been one big connected universe where, hey, guess what? Something happens in Clone Wars or Rebels or the sequel trilogy or this book or this comic or this video game, and it might relate back to other things that are happening in other places. Even, you know, concluding major plot points will happen in a different show. You know, like the entirety of Darth Maul's arc, you can go from Clone Wars to his stint in Solo to Rebels, and now we're going backwards, and we're going back to Clone Wars in season 7, and then there's going to be some comic books about Crimson Dawn and what's going on there, you know. Like, so yeah, guys, this is all connected, all of it, the whole thing, right? And it seems like we're all pretty clear on that, because whenever they do something in the shows that don't exactly translate from the books, people get really upset by that, right? Because it's all supposed to be canon, you know? So you're upset about that, but then when something happens in Book of Boba Fett and you don't like the way it was done, or you don't like the fact that it was done at all, you get really mad when we're going into season 3 of a different show, and it's like, well, that thing that happened was resolved in that other show. I'm like, yeah, that's you know. And again, nothing was hit pause here, you know. Things are constantly happening at the same time as Mandalorian's happening. Luke is doing stuff out there, and Ahsoka's doing stuff out there. Like, they're all living their lives. That's why whenever we meet these characters, they're always like in the middle of an adventure. It's because it's not like they were frozen in carbonite and then suddenly Mando comes along in his TV show and it's like, oh, they hit unpause, now they can start doing stuff. It's like, no, they're doing stuff all the time at the same time, you know. So I don't know, that's my argument. My only thing is just like, no, it's not mandatory that you watch everything. I know that that's a lot of time and dedication, and not everyone can do that, and that's fine, but it is silly if you start complaining about that when you've made the decision not to. Because it's like, no. That is an equal exchange. You have better things to do with your time, or you're not interested in Boba Fett or whatever, and that's fine. But in exchange, you know, an equal exchange here, whatever happens in that show, you're not watching it, so you don't know what happens in the show. You know, and it seems ridiculous that people are so up in arms about this, because, you know, people are like, well, what if maybe it should have been labeled The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, or something like that, right? And my only thing is, the show is Star Wars, you know, Star Wars, The Mandalorian, Star Wars, The Book of Boba Fett, Star Wars, you know, The High Republic. Star Wars is the name that interconnects everything. You know, if you're looking for like an overall umbrella term for this, it's Star Wars. That's the name of the thing that's connecting everything. So it's like, yes, all of it, the whole thing, especially now in the Disney era, it's like, yeah, guys, you know, just it's really, really silly that people are so mad. I had people asking when Andor was coming out, I had people asking, well, who's Andor? Who is that guy? And I'm like, well, did you watch Rogue One? And they're like, well, I watched it once in theaters. I'm like, okay, well, I'll tell you what, you can watch this show, because this is a prequel. Lucky for you, this is a prequel, so you can just watch this show, and then you can watch Rogue One. But if you want to know more about this guy and why he is getting his own show, go watch Rogue One. Go watch it again. He's like the co-lead of that film, right? So it's the same thing of like, if people are like, well, that's stupid, I shouldn't have to watch that. It's like, why is that stupid? Why? How has this not been the situation the entire time? So I don't know, guys. I think everyone's being really silly. I think a lot of people on the internet, they see one complaint because maybe they didn't like the Boba Fett, or maybe they didn't like the way it was structured, which again, that's a different argument. I'm not making that argument that it was structured well or something. But I feel like people on Twitter like to parrot things that they see to complain about, and people love complaining. Complaining is like the favorite thing in the world because it gets the little dopamine hit when they get like 1,000 likes because they complained about something, you know? Anyways, I don't know. That's just my 2 cents on the whole thing. It's, should you have to? No, you don't have to. No one has to. But if you want to know information, if you want to keep up with the story, then you have to, you know, watch the story. Yeah, guys, that's how it works. You know? And if you're going to be like, well, that's not how it works. Well, like, clearly it is, because that's how it did work. You know, if you're going to be like, well, Star Wars is not Marvel, it's like, well, what are you talking about? What do you mean by that? Do you mean it's not a shared universe? Do you mean it's not all one big connectivity? Do you mean things are not happening here that will affect things over there? Or do you just not like the fact that season 2 happened and then Boba Fett happened and now season 3 is happening? Because that just means that the story didn't stop just because the season ended, you know? Sorry? I don't know. You want an apology? I don't know. Anyways, those are my 2 cents. I think people are being ridiculous, and that's just my opinion. All right, see you guys later. Bye.